Okay. All right. All right, good morning. Guys, thank you for coming. Diane, can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you guys for coming. So I know on the website and the registration it said that my presentation was to be announced. That wasn't for trickery or like a big secret. I just hadn't really made a decision yet. I was between these two topics, and I figured out how to fit them both into one presentation. So part one, we're going to talk about developing a successful training brand. So how many people here train, either own their own business or train under somebody else's business in a one-on-one setting? Right? Okay, a lot of us. So Kevin and I, and obviously the other staff here, we've been doing it for what feels like a long time, even though it hasn't been that long. But we've done a lot of work in figuring out how we can develop a sustainable, long-term, successful training brand. Okay? And the second part we're going to talk about is how we program assessments and movement interventions in adult populations. So this is going to segue really well from what Kevin just talked about when we talk about movement principles and what sort of quality patterns we want to see people possess. And now we can start to break down some more of the X's and O's and look at some assessments and look at some interventions for people who may not have some of those movement qualities that we want. Okay? So first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. Again, shitty weather, 4 years in a row for the MBSC Winter Seminar. So thanks again. And it's you guys that make this whole thing, and the people who are staying at the CFSC tomorrow for the certification, thank you. A lot of people in here who are already CFSC certified, thank you. Okay? And if we can all just take a minute and please write this down, www.denalang.org. So for people who aren't from the area, Dena Lang is an MBSC athlete who has trained here, and I've known her at least since she was in 8th grade. She went to Nobles and Greenhoff School in Dedham. She suffered a serious neck injury in the Women's Winter Classic on New Year's Eve. Her family has put together this website as a fundraiser for her, and you don't even have to go donate. Even if you went on and maybe shared it, that would help. Anything that we can do to help her and her family. It's this woman on the left, by the way. She and her sisters and her family are very tied into New England hockey, and they've been part of the MBSC family for a long time. So anything we can do for them is going to be helpful. So thank you guys for that in advance. Okay? So just a little background about myself. I put the picture of the Starbucks cup because it's a really interesting story about how I became a trainer. In the summer of 2009, I interned here at MBSC in the old building in Winchester. And as I finished up my internship, Mike asked me on one of the very last days, he said, hey, how do you feel about doing some part-time work? Because I know you go to school in Boston and you commute. And I said, oh, that'd be great. I'd love it. I love it here. Thanks so much. I got my first MBSC sweatshirt because the summer was ending. We wore red t-shirts all summer, and I was on staff. I got a sweatshirt. And I probably didn't take it off for like 3 weeks. So I worked at Starbucks in the meantime, and I wore this sweatshirt every morning when I went to go open the store in the fall. It was cold, early morning, 5 a.m., and I wore the sweatshirt. And every now and then, it didn't make it off right in time when the store opened. So one guy came in one morning, he'd been coming forever, and to be honest, I actually thought this guy was kind of a dick for the longest time. Like, he came in first thing in the morning, he was like a jerk, and he always asked for cups. He's like, can I have like 20 cups for my staff meeting? And I was like, dude, these are our cups. Like, I need these. I need to order more every day when you come in and take them. So he came in, he's like, Mike Boyles. He's like, I know that guy, because I was wearing my sweatshirt. And he goes, are you a trainer? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he was like, okay. He's like, do you train people in their house? I was like, yes. Like, how much? And I was like, $75 an hour, which was like a shot in the dark. I took a random guess, which ended up being a little less than the going rate for Boston at the time. But I was new and young. And he was like, all right, cool, what's your number? So he called me later on, and I started training him 3 days a week. And before you knew it, I was training his wife and his kids. And I was coaching groups here in the afternoon. I hadn't taken any personal training clients yet. And that's kind of the story about how I got going and started training a lot of people in their houses and eventually began training people here. So again, I was an intern in 2009. I've been on staff since then until current with Kevin the whole time. We have a lot of people who have come and gone and are in great places, but I'm happy to still be here. For the last 2 years, I've been a therapist with Kevin at Movement as Medicine, and last year I was the strength and conditioning coach for the Worcester Sharks, which is the San Jose Sharks affiliate. And we could talk about driving to and from Worcester in snowstorms every day if you guys want, because that was lots of fun. And you might also know me as a Perform Better catalog model. So that's obviously one of the older ones. If we take a look at something more recent, there's a significant difference. But I thought that maybe it was time I joined the great ranks of men and women who have no hair. Like MJ, for example. Okay? Brittany, it's a little dark. And then obviously we all know this guy. Okay? So Andrew Saul is a PhD. He's the founder of dryourself.com. He wrote a book called Doctor Yourself. Really interesting guy. Uses a lot of vitamin therapy, a lot like us, like tries to stay as far away from prescription medication as possible, understands that there's a place in the world for that. But anyways, he said, find the people who are having the most success and do what they do, which I kind of realized when I first saw that. I was like, that's so basic. Like, you could do anything in this world and just find the successful people and copy them. And if you're lucky, like, you'll have a little bit of success, hard work and luck. So here are some of the people that I've been fortunate enough to be around. Mike, Gray, Kevin, our crazy uncle Dan John, Pavel, John Pavlov, who's our resident physical therapist, Andrea Ospina, Brendan, and lastly, Mark Fisher in the middle. And Mark Fisher is a really interesting guy. If you guys want to know anything about managing client relations and developing like a client base that absolutely adores you and worships the ground you walk on, just go hang out at Mark Fisher Fitness. You don't even have to do an internship or a mentorship. Those people are really, really incredible people. Okay? So we're going to break part one down about developing a successful brand into 3 parts. We're going to talk about time management and self-care, which is obviously the most important, because if we can't take care of ourselves, how can we be expected to handle the health care of other people? Okay? Secondly is client relations, like what can we do to maintain successful relationships with clients long term so that they keep giving you money? Okay? And lastly is social media and how to utilize it in a successful way that will market your brand and eventually bring you more income. Okay? So time management and self-care. This book is awesome. I'm going to give you a lot of books, so be prepared to write them down. Okay, Mike started a book club with us on staff, so every 2 weeks he buys us a book, we read it, and then we submit like very easy, short book reports, couple sentences. It's been awesome. It keeps everybody honest about their self-care, and everybody's really benefited from this. So The Perfect Day Formula by Craig Ballantyne is an awesome book. I read it in like an hour and a half. It's short, it's sweet, but you gotta read it. And the biggest takeaway I had from it was that we need to live our lives scripted and not reactive, okay? We need to have a plan. You need to have a plan every day outside of what you do from 9 to 5, or for us, what we do from 5 to 9, okay? So we need to think, what am I gonna do when I have this hour off with no client? So I don't end up sitting around, maybe I check Facebook, maybe I, grab a bite to eat. Like, let's plan out everything, because just like everybody else, like, we have shit to do. Like, I gotta get my oil changed. I gotta, I used to have to go get my hair cut. I have to, go get laundry if Kevin and I are like dropping sheets off. I have stuff to do, and if I don't plan it all out, like 15, 20 minutes will go by of my hour off or my 2 hours off, and I'm like, I was just completely unproductive. So I need to script out every single block that I have available, okay? So this is what Kevin got me last year. It's called the Passion Planner. The Passion Planner is awesome. This is a photo right out of mine, so you can see some of the things. It makes you focus on what your big to-dos for this week are, okay? What are good things that happen, your personal to-do list, your work to-do list, okay? In the middle, I've just put C Gen Book, okay? And I'll go over what Gen Book is, okay? But looking on the left, you see on Sunday, I have to make time for Tommy. That's Tom Brady, for those of you who aren't sure, okay? But seriously, the Passion Planner is awesome, and it helps you to script out everything. And then at the end of every month, it also has you reflect on what you did over the month and things that were good, things that you can improve on. Like, for example, my fiance who's in the back, Molly, we went to the Dominican Republic, and it asked on the flight home, said, name 3 lessons you learned. And I was like, number 1, print your travel documents, because I had no cell service and I couldn't access my travel documents. 2, like, bring extra cash, more than you think you need when you're traveling internationally, because all my credit cards got shut off, okay? So thinking about little things like that, using the Passion Planner is awesome. And then if you're busy, use GenBook. It's the best, $20 a month we spend, okay? And it monitors scheduling for Kevin, myself, Brendan, and Scotty, okay? GenBook is awesome. It allows people to book online, okay? So it gives you something that you can put on your social media profiles, like, hey, you're interested in training? Use this. Click here, book an appointment, okay? So GenBook has been awesome. It helps me to obviously keep my my client schedule organized, but then I can also block off things before and after my workday as a reminder to myself to use GenBook. I don't use the calendar on my phone or on my Mac anymore. Everything's on genbook.com, okay? And then also from Craig Ballantyne, we've got to own the morning. You guys have got to own your morning. 10 extra minutes of waking up early over the course of a year is 2 full days, okay? So start small. Wake up 10 minutes earlier. I put this on Twitter the other day. I know some people saw it. It's wake up not just to go to work. You got to wake up and live and then go to work. So one of my New Year's goals was that my fiance and I were going to have breakfast and hang out 3 days a week. We haven't missed yet. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I don't come here till 9. We wake up. She goes to yoga. I read or do whatever. And then we have breakfast together, and then I come here. I'm significantly more functional and productive throughout the course of the day just for making that time in the morning for myself and for us, okay? But I know it sucks. Like, how can we get to sleep early? I already wake up at 5 a.m. Like, what am I going to do? Put this shit away. Get it out of there. Can't have it in your room at night, okay? Buy an alarm clock. How many of us, raise your hand, I'm guilty, wake up in the morning to your iPhone as the alarm clock? How many of us then, before we even get out of bed, open email, Facebook, Instagram, and or Twitter? Right. Before we're even out of bed, we're already stimulated by this nonsense, okay? So we got to buy alarm clocks, and we got to get this crap in the kitchen, put it in there, okay? Buy an old-fashioned alarm clock, buy 3 of them, doesn't matter. Can't have this stuff in your room at night, and stop watching TV at night too, okay? And get a sleep mask. Okay? If you live with someone or sleep with someone who watches TV or is on their phone or leaves the light on at night, get a sleep mask, okay? Sleep masks are awesome. Use earplugs if you have to. These things are the best, I promise, okay? You will be conditioned to immediately put it on and be like, okay, I'm going to sleep now, okay? Extreme Ownership. This is another great book, okay? Jocko Willink. I suggest listening to it and then reading it. Listening is awesome because it has like really cool sound effects from when he was fighting in the war in the Middle East, and it's just like lots of fun. It's like listening to Die Hard while you're simultaneously getting life lessons, okay? But in Extreme Ownership, he talks about waking up early. He said he saw all these successful people around him having so much success, and he figured out, like, my life is so busy. Why is this guy having so much more success than I am? Because they're waking up earlier. I'm telling you right now, they wake up early. They were polishing their weapons or practicing targets or going for runs or training or doing whatever they needed to do, and that is what helped them to be more successful than the guy to his left or his right. Okay, so task number 1, you pass or fail right away, waking up early. When the alarm clock goes off, it's either you get up and you pass or you hit snooze and you fail. Okay? If you pass the first task of the day and then you make your bed, it sets you up for success to accomplish the rest of your tasks throughout the course of the day. Okay? And lastly, we need to set goals too. And let's talk about outcome goals versus process goals. Okay? Outcome goals are significantly less effective. Okay? An example of an outcome goal is that I want to lose 25 pounds. Okay? That is outcome based. An example of process goals to lose 25 pounds would be train 3 times a week, eat more vegetables, and stop drinking soda. As we can see how the process goals are much more measurable than the outcome goals. And we can hold each other accountable, whether it's you and your clients working together or you and your spouse or whoever it might be. Hold each other accountable on your process goals, okay? We have our fancy chalk paint board back there where we have clients writing goals, okay? And we monitor them as process goals, okay? It's not enough for someone to just say, I want to get bigger, or I want to gain 10 pounds. How are we going to get bigger? How are we going to gain 10 pounds? Okay, I'm going to make sure I have my protein shake every day after my training session, and also an extra peanut butter and jelly sandwich every night, or whatever it might be, okay? So this is just awesome. It's Lumberg, okay, we all know. So we got to start by getting our own shit together. And I know it's tough, and there's so many times when I feel like my shit is like, I'm like, I got to get it together. And Kevin already swore a bunch in his presentation, so I don't feel bad about saying it, okay? So we got to start by getting our shit together. Then we can start to care, really care, and focus on other people's process goals, okay? Second part of part 1, we're going to talk about managing client relations. And this is a really short one, and it's very, very simple. So going back to the guy who came into Starbucks, and I used to think he was kind of a dick, and we became really good friends, and we trained forever. He doesn't like training anymore. He hates training, actually, but we still hang out, and I'm going to tell you exactly what we do. He drives to MBSC. I meet him in the back parking lot. We put our rollerblades on. We rollerblade around Woburn for an hour. We come back, and he hands me $100. Okay? That's not him, but, okay, that's not him. However, this guy's brilliant, if you guys have seen the guy who dances on his rollerblades. Okay? But seriously, this guy is just my friend now, and he pays me $100 an hour to rollerblade with him. Like, that's silly. But it's awesome. It's great for me. It's great for him. He's a smart, successful guy, so I pick his brain about business the whole time. But the number one thing, like the reason we're still such good friends 6 years later, even though we don't train anymore, is because neither one of us are dickheads, okay? It's in this book, Legacy, read Legacy. It's a story about the All Blacks, okay, the rugby team from New Zealand, and how they have managed to have such success in the rugby world over the course of their existence. They've been the best rugby team in the world forever, basically. Okay, but the number one thing they talk about with their teammates is no dickheads allowed. And Mike always says, like, I don't care how smart you are. I don't want to spend an hour with you if you're an asshole. And that's 100% true, okay? So we have to remember that we're here to make people feel better, not just movement quality, but about themselves, okay? So we need to be super nice all the time. You're fired, Donald Trump, and take that ridiculous hair with you. I thought I could get away with that one because we're in Massachusetts, but okay? But really, here's the thing about it, right? If your clients are dickheads, fire them. Who cares? Like, it's not worth however much you're being paid to be miserable for an hour. Just send them to somebody else. Like, I'll be the first person to tell you that I've fired lots of people. I've fired enough people that I'm to the point where I'm happy with my clients. I'm not really taking any new ones. I'm not getting rid of anybody, okay? So you need to be okay with firing people. You need to have an organized process of how you refer people out or fire them, okay? Don't just tell them that they're fired. But we talk about it here all the time in our staff meetings. Every now and then we have people who not just are personal training clients, but who are in adult groups and even athlete groups that we're like, we might want to fire this person because they don't listen to the coach, they don't follow instructions, they're a jerk to everybody else in their group. Okay, so be okay with firing. You have to be okay with that. Okay? And this is something I said, this is the shortened version. Firing people is easy, okay, if you think about it, because personal training is like no other service in a sense that when you go to get a manicure, you tell the woman or man exactly what you want. When you go to get your hair cut, you say, I want you to shave it all off, or I want you to give me color, or I want to, 4 on the sides and 6 on the top. Personal training is the only service where people come and pay us, and then we tell them what to do, okay? We get to be in charge, and they need to remember that. And obviously, you got to meet people where they are a little bit, but you're not going to have successful sessions with people who are just constantly jerks, don't want to do the things that you're asking them to do, okay? So remember, personal training is like no other service. I tell my clients this as like a reminder that I'm in charge, okay? And Mike, people will continue to pay you more money if you make them feel better, okay? This kind of goes on about what Kevin was talking about, is like, can we set up movement quality for people in a way that will allow them to feel good and want to continue coming here? It's not successful for me if I send a guy who's an accountant to work and he comes back the next day after a 6 a.m. training session. He's like, dude, my back hurt when I got to work and my legs were so sore that I couldn't get up and walk to lunch. No, like, I need to do my best to help that guy meet the movement specifications of his life, the demand of his life, and I don't need to turn my adult clients into psychos, okay? And then you want to think about your income, okay? Does anyone know what $52.08 an hour is? $100,000 a year before taxes, okay? So start at the top. If you like, hey, I want to make 100 grand this year, okay? How much money do you need to make a month? Then how much money do you need to make a week? Then how much money do you need to make a day? How many training sessions do you need to do per day? Okay, 5208 is 40 hours a week of personal training or massage therapy to get you $100,000 before taxes, okay? That's the most simple formula as a personal trainer to realize how much money you can and will make. Because think, if I want to make 100 grand and I fall short at 28 sessions a week for the first 4 weeks, I know I'm way off target, okay? Last part we're going to talk about is using social media. Social media is huge in the fitness industry. I think it's probably bigger in the fitness industry than many others, or maybe it's just that's what I see every day on mine, okay? So using Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, okay? This is one of the best books I have ever listened to. And I listened to it because Gary Vaynerchuk is awesome to listen to. He's a passionate guy, and he goes off script a lot. So crush it. Gary Vaynerchuk, for anybody who doesn't know, is a successful business owner. He started Wine Library TV and Wine Library Emporium when he was a kid as an immigrant from Belarus. His father owned a small liquor store in Hoboken. When he took it over, he turned it into a multi-million-dollar international wine distribution business online within the first 5 years. His next goal, he says, is to own the New York Jets. So listen to Crush It. This guy is really smart. He's got podcasts. He's got a website. He offers lots of good business ideas and how you can crush social media so that it makes money for you, okay? Kevin said maybe a year ago, Kevin said to me, Instagram is the new article. When we started posting a lot of videos and pictures on Instagram and we started realizing that we were having a lot of success and getting more followers, okay? And Kevin said, Instagram is the new article. So how many people have scrolled through Facebook or Twitter and been like, oh, that looks like a pretty interesting article, but I don't have time to read it right now, so I'm going to click on it and go back to it later, okay? And how many times have you actually not gone back to it? A lot, right? I have a lot of those still. So Instagram is great because it allows you to provide photo and video and a long supportive caption right away, okay? And people think like, oh, a lot of this doesn't matter. No, it's huge because we immediately realized this. We started posting just about everything on Instagram. We rarely come out with articles because they're quick for us and they're quick for everybody else, okay? So just to show you, this photo on the left is 110 weeks old. It's pretty good. Box hip flexor stretch. It's a good demonstration of what you should do. Pretty helpful, useful information. With a really short caption by us and 12 likes, okay? 110 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago, and we don't have the whole thing, a much more elaborate, we realized like, hey, let's turn these into articles, okay? 447 likes. We're now at about 14,000 followers on Instagram. And people think like that doesn't really matter, but it does because every week, not a week goes by without an online inquiry or a local walk-in from somebody and I'm like, hey, how'd you find out about us or how'd you hear about us? Like, oh, a friend tagged me in one of your Instagram posts and now I follow you guys on Instagram. And so I thought I'd come in and get an appointment. Or an email that's like, hey, I follow you guys on Instagram. I'm in California and I was hoping to set up online personal training. Okay? So this stuff really does work. And it's free. Okay? So they say the number of followers you have doesn't matter. However, there's a strong case to make, considering the people with the most followers typically have the most money. And if we think about Twitter and we think about like professional athletes, they have tons of followers. They also have tons of money. We think about politicians, tons of followers, tons of money. Mike Boyle, tons of followers, tons of money. Okay? So we think about these things, right? And we try to develop ourselves to think like, if we create more opportunity for ourselves, more exposure, then we're going to have more success. Okay? We're going to have more success with more exposure. Okay, so to summarize a quick part one, just about how to manage some of your own social media accounts and your self-care and things like that. Organize and prioritize yourself, okay? Make sure that we're living scripted, not reactive. This is my favorite quote of 2015. And I finished this book right before the new year, okay? We have manage your relationships, so don't be a dick. That's most important to your family, to your clients. Remember, these people pay for your food, okay? They pay to keep your cell phone turned on. They might pay for your kids to get new shoes. Whatever it is, we have to be super nice to them. And lastly, make sure we're using social media effectively. Because you could have the best job in the world. Your friends will pay you money to watch them exercise. Like, how cool is that? If you think about it, like, you develop yourself over 5, 6, 7 years of success. And your clients become really, really good and movement efficient. They come in, you tell them what to do. Like, you don't even have to demo anymore. You just walk around and talk to your friends, and they pay you money, and then they leave. Like, what could be better than that, right? It's like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? Cool. All right, do some split squats, and then we're going to go do a bunch of other stuff. All right, thanks for your money. Bye. Like, they know what to do. They've been coming for a long time, right? So develop these relationships and make them long-lasting. Okay? Any questions on part one? Part one was quick. We're going to get into X's and O's. Yes, Deanna. Okay, so the question was, how do you fire a client or someone in a group setting that's just taking everybody down? And where's Bob? That's Bob's job. No, no, but for us, what I'll try to do is if it's not working with someone, the first thing I'll do to try to like let them down a little easy is I'll see if I can make a referral with someone who it might work. If I can think about somebody, whether it's here or somewhere out in the training world, where I'm like, hey, these two personalities might work together okay, where mine does not. Like, it has to be just like any other, has to be like a marriage or a boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, the relationship has to be there both ways. One person can't be giving in 100% and the other person none. So the first thing I'll do is I'll try to consider if someone else can manage this situation well. And if not, I'll probably just sit them down and tell them that, hey, you know, this isn't really working for me, and I want to see you succeed, and you're not helping me also to put you in the best position to succeed, so I want to see you go somewhere else, and here's a list of possible referrals. And when we have to push somebody out or fire somebody from a group setting, when we get Q&A, maybe we can get Bob in here to talk a little bit more detailed about how we do that. But typically, Mike and Bob will sit down with somebody and tell them that you know, they're having trouble managing the relationship, and the person is just not listening to our coaches, and they're being disrespectful. And most of the time, the thing that's great is that most of the time, we give people another shot, and they always seem to turn it around. I think we've had to really kick out one person ever, actually, and that's it, at least in the last 7 years. Okay, so that's just a quick, successful personal training brand or coaching brand 101. Okay, but now let's get into some X's and O's and more about movement quality and things that Kevin talked about. So we talk about programming, assessments, and interventions in adult populations because let's face it, the majority of us are coaching general population, adult clients who work 9 to 5 jobs. We do have athletes, but that makes up a minority of what we're doing, and it's also not really where our money comes from, okay? So again, just like Kev talked about, what's our standard operating procedure? We view everything through a functional movement system lens, okay? So FMS or SFMA, again, if you're working with people or groups of people and you have not taken the FMS course, level 1, that is the first course that I recommend anybody to go take. And I don't work for the FMS. I don't get paid to endorse them. So that is the first course that I would take. Standard operating procedures are in place to avoid mistakes, and systems are in place to ensure long-term success. Okay, when you're thinking about your assessments, Dan John always thinks about the simple, brilliant, easy stuff that I always forget. I always look at very rigid structures of, you know, my FMS movement patterns and whatever other patterns I consider necessary to assess, but I forget about simple things like this, like asking people if they floss their teeth at night. As if you don't floss every night, how serious can you possibly be about weight loss? Like if you can't accomplish a simple task like flossing every night. How many hours of sleep do you get? Do you eat colored vegetables every day? And I love Dan because he always says this, oh yes, Dan, I eat vegetables every day, every color. And Dan's hilarious for anybody who hasn't seen him. You gotta go listen to him talk, okay? Have you been to the eye doctor recently? The eye doctor can detect cardiovascular disease. The eye doctor can detect high blood pressure. The eye doctor can detect diabetes. I have not been to the eye doctor in a long time. I need to get my shit together. But we need to make sure our people are going to the eye doctor. The eye doctor is just as important as we are. So they need to be put on a level where we consider that important, okay? And then just something simple, asking people simply to get down on the floor, and that's backwards, get down on the floor and then get back up. Just look at what someone does. I asked a guy one day and I was like, can I just see you get down and get up? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, just imagine your grandson's there on the ground, you're gonna play with him. And so he's like, okay. And he actually did like a perfect get up almost on this first day. But it's a good way to assess where someone is in terms of their joint mobility and their tissue extensibility and how well they move, okay? Crazy Uncle Dan. Dan refers to himself as the crazy uncle that the MBSC staff keeps in the closet or in the attic, and we let him out every now and then, okay? So we have all these systems in place that we use to assess and intervene. We use the PRI, think anatomy trains, FRC from Andrea Spina, and then Charlie's sort of training equals rehab, rehab equals training, and lateralizing where appropriate, okay? So we have all these great systems. And for the staff, this slide's for you guys. We have one thing that we can't seem to figure out is that how we can differentiate a music system that's gonna be effective. For anybody who doesn't know, that's the Eagles, and that right there is NWA, okay? I'm guilty of putting on NWA radio one time, and let's just say Mike was not happy, okay? So that's just one thing that we can't seem to figure out if you watch our staff meetings, okay? So when we have a new client, first thing we do, is there pain? Yes right to the SFMA lens, or if it's one of our trainers who isn't utilizing the SFMA, isn't a therapist, then they can refer out. No pain, FMS right away. And if you don't use the SFMA or you're not a therapist, find one and develop a relationship with them. Like Kevin talked about, using the same lens, okay? These two people can speak the same language. That physical therapist and that strength coach can speak the same language. Okay? So one-on-one personal training client with no pain, full functional movement screen. A 1-on-3 or more personal training clients with no pain, we're doing a modified group assessment. So what we're going to talk about today and break down a little bit is the adult assessment that we developed here, okay? Because what we kept running into was at 9:57 for a 10 o'clock group, someone would come in with their friend and say, hey, this is, and I know you guys have all been there, this is my friend Bob, and he wants to try it today. And we say, okay, great, Bob, you can come in. And the group starts in 3 minutes. So what are we going to do? We have no injury history on Bob. We have no movement assessment on Bob. And we need to figure out exactly what we do because we can't tell Bob to leave because we want Bob to become a customer. Okay? So we want to think about our hierarchy of the functional movement screen. This is what we developed, thinking that we would have the most success in managing a 60 to 120 second movement screen with no tools necessary for someone brand new who just walked in off the street. Okay? First, active straight leg raise. Okay? And we're going to go through all of these. Active straight leg raise clears people out for heavy closed chain loaded activities like running and plyometrics. And we also look at shoulder mobility. Okay? Gives us clearance for heavy arm pushing and pulling, overhead pushing and pulling. Okay? And lastly, our toe touch, looking at multi-segmental flexion. So this is our new adult client assessment. This is on the back of all the new intro programs for any adult who walks in brand new. Okay, so if we look from the top, we have active straight leg raise and shoulder mobility. We're scoring left and right. And then we're also looking at a toe touch. Is it there? Is it not? And we make it very easy for our coaches and our interns, make it very foolproof to not screw up. Because here we have active straight leg raise interventions to help correct them. Okay? And then we also have alternatives for patterns that they're not ready for. And you guys will get this in the slides. Okay? We have shoulder mobility interventions, alternatives, and then we also have toe touch interventions, because we know that those are all prerequisites, those are all markers for movement qualities that we need to possess before we could just go out there and start pressing bells overhead and swinging heavy kettlebells. So when we look at the active straight leg raise and all FMS tests, we're obviously, for most of us who have taken it, we're scoring 0 through 3. 0 means pain. Okay? 3, 2, and 1. 3, vertical line of the malleolus resides between mid-thigh and ASIS. 2 resides between mid-thigh and joint line, and 3 resides below the joint line. So we know what our 1s, 2s, and 3s look like. So if we get an active straight leg raise of symmetrical 2s or more, green light, this person is clear. They can hinge, they can deadlift, they can swing. We can walk them through the appropriate progressions. If they're at a 1, okay, or even a 0, which might mean a referral in your case, okay, we're applying the appropriate interventions. We're going through our breathing intervention, we're applying soft tissue intervention to the hip and glute, and then we're going through our leg lowering progressions. Okay, so we've already seen a few of these from Kevin. Okay, this seems to be our most effective, go-to, easiest to intervene with, 90-90 hip shift, okay, with a posterior tilt. We like to use straws. We know that PRI people like to use balloons. We started with balloons, and there were balloons everywhere. So we got rid of the balloons. There were balloons all over the ground, but there's actually straws everywhere now too. So, but the balloons just tend to be a little bit more difficult for people. Okay, soft tissue intervention. Okay, posterior hip pin and stretch with a lacrosse ball. We're thinking about what are some of the limiting factors that are preventing them from getting that symmetrical 2 or 3 on their active straight leg raise. Okay. Posterior hip self-mobilization. Okay. Posterior hip rocking stretch. We just started calling it the butt stretch because clients didn't really understand when we would tell them over and over again the hip rocking stretch. We just call it hip rocking or butt stretch. Okay, and then lastly, Kenny, there you go, pal, our leg lowering progressions. We start getting people going through leg lowering progressions, which some of you might already be doing. But think about if we don't apply some of the necessary interventions before, okay, whether it's doing the soft tissue work or doing the posterior hip capsule stretch, we might be banging our head against the wall doing leg lowers for a year, wondering why when we retest the active straight leg raise, it hasn't gotten any better. Okay, so we need to follow the hierarchy. And then when we look at shoulder mobility, our 3-2-1, fists are within 1 hand length, fists are within 1.5 hand lengths, or fists are not within 1.5 hand lengths. So we know if we get 2+, we're good for pushing and pulling. Okay, we like to think that most people will be clear as long as they show us 2s or 3s, but an appropriate, acceptable progression looks something like this. Like, I want to make sure that people have quality push-ups before I just start letting them press heavy bells overhead. And then we like to work people through some angled overhead pressing with the landmine, okay, and then have us see that they have all the prerequisite shoulder flexion, that they can clear out shoulder flexion without any compensatory patterns through any other spots of their spine before we let them go overhead. And then if we think we have 1s or 0s, again, intervention starts with breathing, soft tissue, okay, then we apply the appropriate movement drills, floor slides or thoracic rotations. So I took out the breathing since you guys already watched it. Then we have a posterior shoulder pin and stretch. And floor wall slides with breathing, okay, utilizing the straw. And think, like Kev talked about, when we want to see a collapsing rib cage that's moving down, okay, we want to think exhale as we slide up. Okay, some people might not be ready for this. You can simply regress them to the floor. And then lastly, we practice thoracic rotation drills, okay, T-spine mobilization. And there are lots of variations on this. One that we've been doing a lot recently, similar position, just we've got the hand on the opposite rib, rotating open that way. Seem to have a lot more success with that one. Okay. And lastly, we'll talk about toe touch. Okay. If there's no toe touch, we're going to apply our breathing intervention, appropriate soft tissue or joint intervention. Okay, then we're going to go into multi-segmental rolling, toe touch progressions, and then importantly, we have to deadlift after. And when we break down into practical in the afternoon, you're going to be in a group, as we go through the stations, you'll be in a group with me and Anna and Nicole and a few other people, and we're actually going to have deadlifting in there, and we're going to walk through all these progressions to get people. Someone walks in on day 1, can't touch their toes, how you can walk them through 6 to 9 weeks and eventually have them deadlifting and swinging heavy bells. Okay. So we've got 4 different patterns of multi-segmental rolling: prone to supine, upper and lower body, okay, and supine to prone, upper and lower body. Most people will struggle with upper body to begin with, so we have people using lower body first. Okay. So the weight of the leg tends to help people get over more. So we usually start there. Look at the 2 on the right. Okay. And then lastly, we'll walk people through toe touching progressions. Toes elevated with an Air-X pad, okay, squeezing, exhaling as we go down. Okay, that's to help people. They're already in a posterior weight shift, so we can get them thinking about that posterior glide of their femurs as they flex through their spine and their hips. And then we force them to practice it on their own by putting them in a heels elevated position, and now they need to forcefully think about how they can get that posterior femoral glide. Okay. And then we need to also lateralize. So we need to remember that what's most important, we've got all these adults coming in, they've got problems left, right, whatever it might be. We need to lateralize. We need to do our job. Okay. Remember, we're fitness and health coaches, instructors, whatever it might be. We need to remember that people come to see us for fitness. They don't come to see us for toe touches. They don't come to see us for shoulder flexion. Okay? They do, but they don't really know that. They know that they're coming for fitness. So we need to use our lateralizations. So for example, no deadlift. We're going to apply the appropriate interventions, but we're also going to utilize goblet squatting. So for example, little Johnny comes in with his entire hockey team, and every player on Johnny's team can touch their toes. And they all have a good hinge, and they're all cleared to deadlift, except for Johnny. What I cannot do is allow Johnny's hockey team to go deadlift and make him go stand in the corner and practice toe touching without letting him have some sort of heavy bilateral lift. Because that's one thing that I think gets lost along the way through all of this corrective intervention phase that all us trainers and coaches and therapists are going through, is that we need to also remember that we're there to apply fitness, okay? We need to make sure that we apply the fitness modality also. or else people are going to stop coming to see you. If they wanted therapy strictly, they would go to a therapist. Okay? And then we think about not going overhead. I need to apply the appropriate interventions, and then I also need to lateralize where available. Most of our adults are not clear to press kettlebells overhead, not clear to do chin-ups. Most of them. Some of them are, but most of them are not. So we utilize cable X pull down, we utilize landmine press in order to give them some variation of going overhead, at least at a slight angle. So to summarize part 2, okay, and we're right on time, I'm catching us back up, is that assessments are in place to avoid mistakes, but we have to remember that systems are in place for long-term success. So the thing that's great about utilizing these systems is that wherever we may be in the world of MBSC coaches and staff members, we know exactly what's going on in the gym all the time. Like Mike's in Lake Placid right now driving here, and he knows what's going on that side of the wall. He knows exactly what exercises are being utilized and what exercises are not being utilized. Because we have a system in place, all the coaches adhere to it. Even if we don't agree with it, we need to remember that it's Mike's name on the door, so we have to utilize his system. And if you're a gym owner and you have trainers and coaches who work for you, it's got to be the same. Sit down, pool together all the exercises you believe in. Give them a category, give them progressions, regressions, and lateralizations, and then build your system around there. I always use the exercise Russian twist as an example, because we all know we don't do Russian twists. Like, we don't like Russian twists. How do you progress or regress or lateralize that? What would be the appropriate answer? There isn't one. Like, what's a lateralization for a Russian twist? It's like a weird exercise that lives in a category of its own. But if I asked you to regress a kettlebell swing, we know that it's a kettlebell deadlift. So we need to have these systems in place, and everybody on your staff or you as an individual need to believe in them in order to have long-term success. And then we also need to make sure that we make the appropriate referral when needed. Kevin and I use John Paloff, who's our resident physical therapist. We also use Holly Fitzgerald, who's a physical therapist down the street. We have lots of options. We have a big network. We need to check our egos and just make sure that if we can't help somebody, we're not having success applying the interventions that we believe in, and someone's not having success, then we need to refer out. Okay? And lastly, we need to make sure that we continue to do our job. Even though we have multiple modalities and multiple interventions that we can apply for these people who have movement difficulty, okay, they don't have movement literacy, we also need to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to apply the appropriate fitness intervention so that they continue to have success and get better and build up durability and have long-term health. Okay? Thank you. Okay? Lastly, this is where you can contact me. Email, Twitter, Instagram. Okay? My personal stuff and the Movement as Medicine stuff is all there. And I can't reiterate enough, guys, what's really important to us here is if everybody could go here to denalang.org one more time and just share it or donate even $5. It would really mean a lot to us. Again, she's a very important member of the MBSC family, and we're pulling for her. So thank you guys very much.